In the galaxy's farthest reaches, the Empress Xalira of the Vroxan Empire knelt, her head bowed low before a human, an action no Vroxan royal would ever dare to perform. Her tall, lithe figure radiated with a shimmering blue glow, a trait unique to her species, and her lavender eyes sparkled with desperate hope. The starlit throne room of her capital city on the planet Vroxans was empty except for a single figure. Major Aiden Kerrick, a decorated human soldier and captain of the daring Flame, was as stunned as anyone could be. He had been summoned to the Vroxan court without explanation, pulled across light years from his station on Mars with cryptic urgency. Now, the Empress herself was kneeling at his feet. This was no mere diplomatic plea. This was something much deeper. "Please, Captain Kerrick," she implored, her voice carrying the faint musical hum that characterized Vroxan speech. "We are out of options. My people are dying." Aiden took a slow, deep breath, feeling the weight of her words sink in. He had fought beside the Vroxans before in their shared battles against the relentless Vroxan conclave, but never had he expected to see their proud empress so vulnerable. He cleared his throat, trying to maintain his composure. "Empress Xalira," he replied, his voice firm but respectful. "I don't understand. What threat could be so dire that it brings you to this?" Xalira looked up, her eyes brimming with desperation. "The Vroxans have unleashed a bioweapon on us. They call it Elixirum, and it was developed specifically to target Vroxan physiology. Our healers are at their wits' end. Even our youngest are showing signs of infection, and within weeks, it will spread to every city, every household. Why not call on the Federation's medical corps?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "They refused to intervene. The Vroxans made it appear that we provoked them, and the Federation is eager to stay neutral in what they deem an internal dispute. But you, Aiden," she said, her voice softening, "you are not bound by their restrictions." Aiden felt a pang in his chest, thinking of the lives he might save, or might fail to save. "You want me to break Federation law and sneak onto a Vroxan research planet to retrieve a cure for your people?" "No," she said, surprising him. "That would be impossible. The research sites are too fortified. We need something far bolder and far riskier. We believe an ancient human relic, known as the Primal Codex, contains the genetic secrets necessary to counteract Elixirum." The name jolted Aiden. The Primal Codex was a legend. An ancient database supposedly created in humanity's early days of space exploration. It held information on countless alien species and genetic adaptations. But the relic had been lost centuries ago. "Empress, that's a long shot," he replied, his voice tinged with doubt. "No one's seen the Codex in over 300 years. It could be myth, or if it's real, it could be anywhere in the galaxy." Xalira rose to her feet, regaining her regal composure. "We have information that it lies on the desolate moon of Kithros. My people's long-range probes detected human signatures from an ancient wreckage site. I've sent scouts, but none have returned." She hesitated, her eyes locking onto his. "I can think of no one else to take this mission. If you can retrieve the Codex, we can synthesize a cure and save millions." Aiden felt a strange sense of destiny pulling at him. The odds were impossible, and it sounded like a suicide mission, but the Empress had placed her faith in him, and that meant something. She was not just any ruler. She had risked her life on the battlefield, had brought her people peace against insurmountable odds. If she was willing to humble herself, there was no way he could say no. "I'll do it," he said, straightening. "But I'll need a small team and an extraction plan." A flicker of relief crossed her face, and she placed a delicate hand on his shoulder. "You have my gratitude, Captain Kerrick. My second-in-command, General Theros, will provide you with everything you need." Just then, the throne room doors opened, and in strode General Theros, a formidable Vroxan warrior, with skin an even deeper shade of blue than the Empress's, and dark silver armor that gleamed under the room's lights. Theros nodded respectfully, but did not attempt to mask the skepticism in his gaze. "Human," he said curtly, "your reputation precedes you. But this mission is unlike any you have faced." Aiden met his gaze. "Then let's waste no time," he replied, undaunted. "Tell me about Kithros." Theros handed him a holographic map of the moon. "It's inhospitable, marked by extreme temperatures, and crawling with remnants of an unknown military force. Our scans picked up non-biological life forms, likely automated defense drones." Aiden absorbed the information, mentally mapping out his approach. "And if I do find the Codex, what guarantee do I have that your people will honor the alliance with humanity?" Empress Xalira placed her hand on her heart in the Threlian gesture of promise. "I swear, Captain Kerrick, the Threlian Empire will forever be in humanity's debt if you succeed." Aiden nodded, accepting her vow. "Then I'll assemble my team and head for Kithros at dawn." But as he turned to leave, Xalira's voice stopped him. "Captain," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "one more thing. Be careful of the Codex's protectors. They are known as the Spectral Keepers, and their loyalty to the Codex is absolute. They were designed to repel any intruders, human or otherwise." Aiden gave a grim smile. "Noted. I'll be ready for them." As he exited the throne room, Aiden could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him, but a spark of excitement grew as well. The journey to Kithros would test him and his team in ways they could not predict. And the Empress's plea? It lingered in his mind like a silent vow, urging him forward into the unknown. Captain Aiden Kerrick stood on the bridge of the daring flame, his ship's sleek frame cutting through the dark expanse as it neared the desolate moon of Kithros. His crew was a small, hand-picked team, each member with a unique skill set suited for what lay ahead. There was Lieutenant Mira Vasquez, a former Federation scout with expertise in recon and infiltration, Dr. Lennox, a xenobiologist with knowledge of ancient artifacts, and Tarek, a Threlian defector who had fought under the banner of the Vroxan Conclave but switched sides after witnessing their merciless tactics. The team had trained relentlessly over the last 2 days, running simulations and combing through intelligence reports from the Threlians. They knew they were headed into hostile territory, and if the reports about the Codex's defenses were accurate, this mission would be the most challenging of their careers. "Kithros in sight," said Mira, her voice calm but focused. "Sensors are picking up extreme magnetic storms across the surface. Landing might be tricky." Aiden examined the holographic display, studying the patterns of the storms. The Codex site was situated within a mountainous region, where the atmospheric conditions would make landing virtually impossible. "We'll need to use the dropship to get closer, but we'll still have to cover some ground on foot," he replied. Tarek gave a low grunt. "I've seen what storms like that do to exposed equipment. We'll need to move fast, or our systems will fry before we reach the Codex." Dr. Lennox adjusted her visor, pulling up the life signs readings. "No organic life detected, but I'm seeing scattered heat signatures. Probably the automated defenses General Theros warned us about." Aiden felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. He looked at each member of his team, meeting their eyes. "We're only going to get one shot at this. Our objective is simple: get to the Codex, retrieve the data we need, and get out. Everyone clear?" They nodded, and he could see the mix of determination and tension in their faces. Aiden turned back to Mira. "Take us in." The daring flame maneuvered into position above Kithros' turbulent surface, and the team boarded the dropship. As they descended, the violent storms tossed the craft, forcing Mira to wrestle with the controls. But she managed to land them in a sheltered valley about 2 kilometers from the Codex's last known location. The ground was bleak and lifeless, marked by jagged rocks and ash-colored soil. As they disembarked, Aiden activated his helmet's visor, scanning the area. The air was thin, and even through his suit's filters, he could feel the dry, metallic tang of the atmosphere. "Stay alert," he ordered, as the team moved forward in formation. The trek was grueling, the landscape rough and unforgiving. Aiden could feel the electrical currents in the air as the storms crackled above, filling the sky with purple and green arcs of energy. It was eerily silent, save for the occasional rumble of rocks disturbed by the vibrations. After nearly an hour, Mira raised her hand, signaling a halt. "Captain, I'm picking up movement ahead. Non-biological, about 20 meters out." Aiden motioned for them to take cover behind a rocky outcrop, and they peered over cautiously. In the distance, he saw a group of mechanical constructs patrolling the perimeter of what appeared to be an ancient facility, partly buried in the rocky terrain. The constructs moved with a precise, unsettling fluidity, angular bodies with glowing red sensors scanning their surroundings. "Spectral keepers," Lennox whispered. "They're designed to protect the Codex. Each one of those things has the combat power of a small tank." Aiden considered their options. "We could try to disable them one at a time, but it'll take too long." "Tarek, you said you had some experience with old Vroxan tech. Any ideas?" Tarek nodded, already pulling out a small EMP device. "I might be able to short-circuit their sensors temporarily, but it won't last long. Once we're inside, they'll be on high alert." "Do it," Aiden replied. "Mira, cover us. Lennox, stay close and be ready to patch anyone up if things get messy." With practiced skill, Tarek set the EMP charge, and within moments, a low hum rippled through the air. The spectral keepers froze momentarily, their sensors flickering, giving the team the opening they needed. Aiden signaled, and they dashed across the open ground, reaching the entrance of the facility just as the keepers began to reboot. They slipped inside, the heavy doors sealing shut behind them. The interior was a dimly lit corridor lined with strange symbols that pulsed with a faint, bluish glow. Dr. Lennox examined the markings, tracing her fingers over the glyphs. "These symbols, they're in an ancient human dialect, but modified with alien script. It's as if the Codex was preserved here by a group that revered humanity." "That means we're on the right track," Aiden said, glancing around. "Let's keep moving." They pushed deeper into the facility, navigating a maze of corridors and chambers, each one filled with relics and artifacts from countless species. At last, they reached a large chamber at the center of the complex. In the middle of the room, bathed in a beam of bluish light, was a tall, intricately designed console with a crystalline surface. Dr. Lennox's eyes widened. "The Primal Codex." The Codex emitted a soft hum, and as they approached, its surface lit up, projecting holographic images and data streams in dozens of languages, each displaying intricate genetic sequences and evolutionary maps. Aiden marveled at the sight. It was as if the Codex held the secrets of life itself. But before they could access it, an alarm blared through the facility, and the chamber doors slammed shut. A mechanical voice echoed from the walls in a language they barely understood, yet the meaning was clear. "Intruders detected. Activating full defense protocol." The room's walls began to shift, revealing compartments where new spectral keepers emerged, more advanced than the ones outside. These ones had sleek, obsidian-colored armor and energy blades extending from their arms. "Everyone, defensive positions," Aiden shouted, drawing his weapon. The battle was intense and chaotic. The spectral keepers were relentless, moving with terrifying speed and precision. Aiden fired shot after shot, managing to take down one keeper, only for two more to take its place. Mira darted between cover points, landing well-aimed shots that disabled some of their attackers' sensors, while Lennox provided support, patching up any wounds as fast as they appeared. Tarek, meanwhile, had made his way to the Codex console, desperately trying to bypass its security systems. "Aiden! I'm close, but I need more time. Make it quick!" Aiden yelled, as he blocked an incoming strike from a keeper with his energy shield. Just as the spectral keepers began to overwhelm them, Tarek shouted, "Got it!" And the Codex emitted a powerful pulse, deactivating the keepers. The room fell silent once more. Aiden caught his breath, then turned to Tarek. "Did you get the data?" Tarek held up a small data crystal. "Every bit of it. This crystal contains the genetic codes and countermeasures needed to neutralize Elixirum." After delivering the data crystal containing the genetic countermeasure from the Codex, Captain Aiden Kerrick and his team found a hero's welcome awaiting them on Vorilas. The city was abuzz with a sense of hope that hadn't been felt for weeks. With the countermeasure now in Threlian hands, the Empire's top scientists immediately set to work synthesizing the cure, racing against time to save those already affected by Elixirum. But even as celebrations began to erupt across the city, Aiden sensed a strange tension in the air. He had delivered the Codex data, yet something felt unfinished. A day after returning, Aiden was summoned back to the palace for a private meeting with Empress Xalira and General Theros. His team was allowed to rest, but Aiden went alone, curiosity piqued. He entered the Empress's private chamber, where Xalira and Theros were already seated, both with solemn expressions. Xalira rose, her shimmering blue gaze meeting his with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "Captain Kerrick," she began, her tone unusually guarded. "First, let me thank you again for what you and your team have done. Because of your bravery, we have the key to survival. But I must confess, we need you once more." Aiden's brow furrowed, an uneasy feeling gnawing in his stomach. "Empress, with all due respect, my team and I just risked our lives to retrieve the Codex. What more could you need?" She nodded, acknowledging the burden she was placing on him. "When we began synthesizing the cure from the Codex data, we discovered something unexpected, an anomaly in the genetic sequence." General Theros leaned forward, his voice a low growl. "The Codex data appears to contain something more than the cure, a hidden layer of encryption, one that matches Vroxan coding. It's as if the Codex was altered specifically to interact with this bioweapon." Aiden's eyes widened. "Are you saying the Vroxans had access to the Codex data? That they knew we'd find it and embedded a trap?" Empress Xalira shook her head. "Not exactly. Our scientists believe that the Codex holds a map of sorts, leading to a facility where the Vroxans have been conducting experiments. A facility where they might even be producing new strains of Elixirum. This was something we had no knowledge of before." The pieces started to fall into place in Aiden's mind. "So, if we follow this map, we could potentially find the source of Elixirum." "Precisely," she replied, her voice hardening. "This is why I must ask you and your team to undertake one more mission. Locate this facility, uncover the Vroxans' plans, and if possible, eliminate their ability to manufacture these weapons entirely. If Elixirum can be neutralized at the source, we won't just save the Threlians. We could save countless worlds from falling victim to biological attacks." Aiden felt the weight of her request settling heavily on his shoulders. The mission to Kithros had been harrowing, and his team was barely recovered. But the chance to strike a decisive blow against the Vroxans, to finally put an end to their ruthless biowarfare, it was an opportunity he couldn't turn down. "Where do I find this facility?" he asked, steeling himself. Empress Xalira glanced at Theros, who activated a hologram of a star map. "According to our scientists, the coordinates lead to a remote world on the edge of Vroxan-controlled space, Kareth 4. It's heavily fortified, and we believe the facility is located deep underground. You'll be facing the Vroxan Elite Guard, and possibly worse." Aiden nodded, absorbing the information. I'll brief my team and head out as soon as possible." Xalira gave him a faint, sad smile. "Once again, Captain Kerrick, you bear the hopes of not just my people but of many. I am eternally grateful." Returning to the daring flame, Aiden gathered his team in the briefing room and filled them in on the new mission. Mira, Lennox, and Tarek listened intently, their faces hardening as he described the Vroxan facility and the likelihood of facing bioengineered horrors. Dr. Lennox, ever the scientist, looked both horrified and intrigued. "If the Vroxans really are creating new strains of elixirum, we might not just be dealing with a weapon. They could be trying to make something adaptable, something that could evolve." Tarek grunted, his expression dark. "The Vroxans have never known restraint. They'd poison entire star systems if it meant victory." Mira shook her head. "This is madness. But if we're going in, we need to be prepared for anything. Their facility won't just be guarded. It'll be booby-trapped with defenses we haven't seen before." Aiden nodded, his gaze steely. "We'll need every tool at our disposal. Mira, prepare cloaking protocols for our approach. Lennox, gather as much information on anti-bioweapon measures as you can. Tarek, get us as much intel on Vroxan security as possible. We go in quiet, hit hard, and get out alive." The team dispersed to make their preparations, each of them aware of the gravity of what lay ahead. The fight for Kareth 4 wouldn't just be a battle. It would be a last stand against a species willing to cross every line for power. 2 days later, the daring flame approached Kareth 4 under the cover of cloaking technology, staying low in the planet's shadow to avoid detection. The facility's exact coordinates placed it in a barren desert valley, a natural fortress surrounded by jagged cliffs and treacherous canyons. Mira piloted the ship with expert precision, guiding them through the narrow paths between rock formations until they reached a hidden landing zone just a kilometer from the facility. "We're in position," she reported, powering down the engines. Aiden, fully armored and ready, led the team out into the oppressive heat of Kareth IV's desert. The ground was cracked and parched, with shimmering waves of heat distorting the horizon. They moved swiftly and silently, navigating their way toward the facility's entrance. Tarek halted, raising a hand. "Sensors show energy fields ahead. Likely part of a containment system. If we trip them, they'll know we're here." Mira studied the readings. "I can disable them, but it'll take a few minutes." Aiden nodded. "Do it. We'll cover you." As Mira worked to disable the energy fields, Aiden scanned their surroundings. The Vroxan facility was partially embedded in the cliffside, a massive, fortified structure with a series of heavily guarded checkpoints. Guards patrolled in pairs, their sleek black armor glinting in the harsh light. Finally, Mira finished. "The fields are down. Let's move." They advanced toward the facility's main entrance, avoiding detection by slipping into the shadows. Aiden raised his hand, signaling a halt as they neared the entryway, a set of reinforced doors guarded by 2 Vroxan sentries. Aiden gestured to Tarek, who pulled out a silenced energy pistol and took aim. 2 quiet shots later, the sentries crumpled to the ground, and the team moved forward, dragging the bodies out of sight. The door slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a dark, metallic corridor lit by red emergency lights. The air was heavy with the smell of antiseptic and metal, and a low hum reverberated through the walls, signaling the power flowing through the complex. They crept forward, navigating the sterile, maze-like corridors with growing tension. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. Walls were lined with containment chambers, each one filled with specimens in various stages of genetic mutation. Some were Threllians, others alien species they didn't recognize, all bearing the signs of Elixirum's ravaging effects. Lennox whispered, "This is barbaric. They're experimenting on live subjects." Aiden's jaw clenched. "We end this today. Let's find the main lab." After hacking through multiple layers of security, they finally reached the heart of the facility. A vast, sterile lab filled with vats of glowing liquid and towering consoles. Standing before one of the consoles was a Vroxan scientist clad in dark robes, manipulating holographic controls. Aiden and his team took cover, observing. The scientist was speaking into a comm device in a harsh, guttural tone that made Aiden's skin crawl. He strained to listen, and his translator picked up part of the message. Phase 3 is complete. Deployment of adaptive elixirum strain imminent. Once distributed, there will be no cure. Aiden's heart pounded. They had to act now. He nodded to Mira, and she fired. A clean shot that hit the scientist's shoulder, knocking him backward. The scientist staggered, his hand hitting a console as he fell, and alarms blared throughout the facility. The lab exploded into chaos as automated defense turrets descended from the ceiling, firing in all directions. Aiden's team returned fire, dodging between cover points as the turrets unleashed a relentless barrage. Lennox quickly downloaded all the data from the scientist's console, transferring it onto a small storage device. Got it! She shouted, as she ducked behind a console to avoid a turret's fire. The battle was fierce, but with careful teamwork and precision, they managed to disable the turrets and eliminate the remaining guards. The lab was in shambles, smoke filling the air as sparks rained down from the damaged equipment. Aiden turned to Lennox, who held up the storage device triumphantly. This has all their research. With it, we can reverse every strain they've developed. But before they could celebrate, the ground rumbled, and the facility's automated voice spoke. Self-destruct sequence initiated. Evacuate immediately. Aiden cursed under his breath. Everyone move! We've got 5 minutes. They sprinted back through the corridors, alarms blaring and emergency lights flashing. The facility was coming apart at the seams, sections of the ceiling collapsing as explosions erupted around them. At last, they burst out into the desert, running for the daring flame as the facility detonated in a massive explosion, sending a plume of smoke and debris into the air. Breathless and battered, they climbed aboard, and Mira took the controls, lifting them away from the devastated facility just as the entire cliffside crumbled, burying any remnants of the Vroxans' experiments beneath tons of rock. With the data secured, Aiden and his team returned to Vroxan, where Empress Xalira awaited them once again, her gratitude boundless. The Vroxan threat had been neutralized at its core, and thanks to the data they'd obtained, the Threllians could ensure that elixirum would never harm another being again. As he stood before the Empress, exhausted but triumphant, Aiden realized that their victory was more than just the end of a mission. It was the beginning of a new era, an alliance that could stand against any threat, a promise of peace forged through bravery and sacrifice. Dr. Lennox approached the console, examining the codex one last time. This technology, it's beyond anything I've ever seen. If we could bring this back to the Federation, it could change the fate of countless species. Aiden shook his head. That's a conversation for another time. Right now, our priority is getting this back to the Empress and saving the Threllian people. They retraced their steps back through the facility, but as they reached the entrance, the ground trembled violently. The storm outside had intensified, and lightning bolts struck perilously close to the structure, causing parts of the ceiling to collapse. Move, move! Aiden shouted as they sprinted through the ruins. They made it back to the dropship, Mira firing up the engines just as the ground behind them crumbled. The dropship lifted off, narrowly escaping the facility as it collapsed entirely, burying the codex once more. When they returned to Vroxan, Empress Xalira awaited them with anxious eyes. She visibly relaxed as Aiden handed her the data crystal. You've done the impossible, Captain Kerrick, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. My people will survive because of you. Aiden looked at her, exhausted but proud. I hope this is enough to keep them safe, Empress. Xalira placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression softening. You have earned not only our gratitude but a lasting alliance. The Threlian Empire stands with humanity. As Aiden and his team left the palace, he couldn't help but wonder what other ancient secrets lay hidden in the galaxy, waiting to be uncovered, and what humanity's role would be in shaping the future of the stars. When Captain Aiden Kerrick and his team returned to Varilas, the people awaited them with an exuberant welcome. As the daring flame docked, banners in vibrant Threlian colors adorned the square outside the palace, and citizens filled the streets, cheering and chanting. In the grand hall, Empress Xalira awaited them with General Theros by her side. Her expression, once tense with worry, softened as Aiden approached, his face etched with exhaustion. Captain Kerrick, she said, her voice reverent, you have not only saved my people, you have granted us hope for a future beyond the cruelty of the Vroxan Empire. The Threlians owe you a debt we may never be able to repay. Aiden gave her a respectful nod. Empress, this mission would have been impossible without your guidance. My team and I are honored to stand with you against such a threat. General Theros stepped forward, his usual stoic demeanor replaced by a rare smile. You and your team have done the impossible. With the data you brought back, our scientists have already begun synthesizing a vaccine, and reports indicate that Elixirum's spread has been halted. Xalira extended her hand, a glint of something in her eyes, admiration, and perhaps something more profound. Captain Kerrick, the Federation and Threlians are bound by this victory. The Vroxan threat may never fully vanish, but with allies like you, we are more than capable of facing it. Aiden felt a surge of pride and gratitude. He had ventured into unknown and hostile territory, risking everything. And now, he saw the powerful impact their mission had achieved. A new alliance, a partnership that transcended species and politics. Yet, there was still a lingering feeling in his chest, a question of what lay ahead. News of Aiden's mission spread across star systems, and soon, an invitation was extended to both the Federation and the Threlian Empire to attend the Galactic Unity Summit on Celestra, a neutral world where leaders gathered to discuss matters of interstellar peace. Captain Kerrick was invited to speak alongside Empress Xalira, sharing the story of their alliance and the defeat of the Vroxan bioweapon threat. His crew accompanied him, each of them representing the bravery, resilience, and unity forged during their mission. On the summit's opening night, Aiden stood beside Xalira in the Grand Assembly Hall, a vast domed structure adorned with holographic projections of galaxies and worlds. Leaders from hundreds of species filled the hall, their gazes fixed on him as he spoke. Our mission was one of survival, Aiden said, his voice carrying through the hall. But it was also one of trust. In the face of devastation, the Threlian Empire opened its doors to humanity, and together, we overcame a weapon meant to divide and destroy. If we can unite against the threat of Elixirum, then I believe we can overcome anything. The crowd erupted into applause, and Aiden glanced at Empress Xalira, who gave him a smile that spoke of both respect and a deeper bond. She stepped forward, adding her voice to his. The Threlians have long believed in strength through unity, Xalira said. Captain Kerrick's courage, and the courage of his team, has shown us that strength does not come from conquest, but from compassion and solidarity. This alliance with humanity marks the dawn of a new era. When they finished, the leaders and representatives in the hall rose to their feet, applauding the unbreakable alliance they had forged. It was a historic moment, and as Aiden looked around, he felt a sense of profound accomplishment. After the summit, Aiden and his team returned to Federation space as heroes. For the next few months, they enjoyed the fruits of their labor, celebrations, commendations, and time spent with loved ones. Yet, for Aiden, a restless feeling remained. The victory had been monumental, but there were whispers of a growing resistance within Vroxan territory. Aiden knew that peace was always fragile, and that the Vroxan Empire would not forgive such a blow to their plans. Then, one day, he received an encrypted message from an unknown source. It contained only a few words, but they struck him like a thunderbolt. The Vroxans are mobilizing. They're building something more dangerous than Elixirum. Coordinates attached. Without hesitation, Aiden contacted his team, and soon, Mira, Lennox, and Tarek joined him in the briefing room aboard the daring Flame. They examined the coordinates, which led to a remote star system on the edge of known space, a system dominated by a massive, resource-rich planet called Mindris IV. Dr. Lennox frowned as she examined the data. If the Vroxans are developing something here, it could mean another weapon. But this planet, it has unique mineral deposits, elements that can alter biochemistry on a massive scale. Tarek's jaw clenched. They're not satisfied with Elixirum. They're developing something worse. Aiden looked around the room, feeling the familiar surge of purpose rising within him. This might be our last chance to dismantle the Vroxan war machine before it can strike again. I won't force any of you to come with me on this mission, but if we don't act now, there may not be another opportunity. Mira met his gaze, her eyes blazing with determination. Captain, we've followed you through hell and back. We're with you to the end. The others nodded in agreement. They were a team, one forged in fire and unbreakable loyalty. The journey to Mindris IV was fraught with danger. They knew that this mission could be their last, and as the daring Flame approached the Vroxan stronghold, the atmosphere aboard the ship grew tense. They scanned the planet, finding a colossal facility nestled within an active volcanic region. The energy signature suggested an immense laboratory or manufacturing plant, and from what they could see, it was guarded by an entire armada. Looks like the Vroxans are expecting trouble, Mira muttered, studying the defenses. Aiden's mind raced. This wasn't just a facility, it was a fortress. They would need a new strategy, something that could disable the facility without exposing them to overwhelming firepower. Then, he remembered the codex data they'd retrieved on Kithros. Among the data had been a schematic for an ancient device, an energy disruptor, capable of short-circuiting complex systems. Dr. Lennox had adapted the plans to Federation technology, and after hours of work, they'd successfully built a prototype. Lennox, can the disruptor handle something on this scale? Aiden asked. Lennox nodded, a fierce glint in her eyes. If we get close enough to the facility, we can overload their defenses. But we'll need to move fast. With a plan in place, Mira piloted the daring Flame into the planet's atmosphere, skimming the surface and avoiding detection as best they could. When they reached the volcanic valley where the facility was located, Aiden gave the order. Deploy the disruptor. A beam of pulsating energy shot from the daring Flame, striking the facility's power core. The ground shook, and in an instant, the facility's defenses flickered and collapsed. Sirens blared, and Vroxan soldiers scrambled to respond, but the disruptor had left them momentarily powerless. The team descended from the ship, weapons drawn. They fought their way through the disoriented guards, each of them moving with deadly precision. Tarek took point, clearing the way, while Lennox and Mira provided cover. Aiden led them through the chaotic corridors, their objective clear: reach the main laboratory and destroy whatever new weapon the Vroxans were developing. At last, they reached the lab, a vast chamber filled with vats of an eerie, luminescent liquid. Within each vat was a grotesque hybrid creature, engineered with a mix of Vroxan and Threlian DNA. Lennox gasped, horrified. They're creating bioweapons that can target specific species. This isn't just another Elixirum. It's genocide in a bottle. Aiden's face hardened. We're putting an end to this. Now! As they planted charges around the lab, alarms blared, and a squad of Vroxan elites stormed the room. A brutal fight erupted, energy blasts and weapons clashing as they fought to complete their mission. One by one, they took down the Vroxans, but just as they were finishing, an enormous Vroxan commander, clad in advanced armor, entered the lab, wielding a weapon that pulsed with dark energy. "You think you can stop the Vroxan Empire?" the commander sneered, raising his weapon. Aiden fired, dodging the commander's retaliatory strike. The two clashed, exchanging brutal blows, until finally, with a swift, calculated strike, Aiden found an opening and delivered a fatal shot. With the commander defeated, Aiden and his team activated the charges and sprinted out of the facility. They barely reached the daring flame when the lab erupted in a massive explosion, sending debris high into the sky and obliterating the Vroxan's weapon of mass destruction. Back aboard the daring flame, Aiden and his team watched as the firestorm from the explosion died down. They were exhausted, but victorious. The Vroxans' plans had been destroyed, their threat neutralized, at least for now. When they returned to Federation space, they were hailed as heroes once more. Empress Xalira reached out to personally commend them, her voice filled with emotion as she spoke. "You have saved countless lives," she said. "The Threllians and many other worlds are in your debt. Captain Kerrick, the bond between our people is eternal." For the first time in his life, Aiden felt the full weight of what it meant to be a hero, not for glory, but for the lives he had saved and the peace he had helped forge. As the galaxy celebrated their triumph, Aiden and his team knew that they had not only fought against an empire, they had fought for something much greater, a future where all could live without fear, and where unity could overcome even the darkest threats. And for Aiden Kerrick, that was the most meaningful victory of all.